Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from whichever part of the world you're joining in. Welcome to this session on the Park Launch platform. My name is Atifa Asghar. I'm going to be your host for the session. And the individual that I will be having a conversation with is somebody who I've known personally for many years, somebody that I respect deeply, somebody that I admire greatly. It's none other than Mrs. Yasmeen Lari. As you can see, she's on the screen as well. So Yasmeen, you can wave to
Hello
everybody.
there. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Yeah. Yeah.
So just a bit of an introduction. I'm just going to give a very brief introduction of Yasmeen because I want her to tell us more about herself rather than listening to me saying things about her. Yasmeen is somebody who is very well renowned both nationally and internationally. She's won many awards here in Pakistan as well and outside of Pakistan. She's won the Fukuoka Award from Japan. She's won the Jane Drew Award. And the most recent, and correct me, Yasmeen, if I'm wrong, what's known as the Crown June in the architecture world, which is the Royal Gold Medal, which has been given to Yasmeen this year by the Royal Institute of British Architects on behalf of the British monarch, which is King Charles III. And she's the first Pakistani to get that award. So that's a huge, huge honor, not just for Yasmeen, but I feel for all the Pakistanis and for the country. So
Thank you.
Yasmeen, once again, it's always a pleasure talking to you, Yasmeen. You and I, we go back many, many years.
That's right.
So,
You know me inside out. So, yeah, yeah.
well, yes, that's true as
Absolutely.
well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was a bit of an introduction by myself. So as I said, we are here to listen to what Yasmeen has to say. So Yasmeen, once again, welcome. So I
Thank
just
you.
want to start by you've been given many labels, right? I mean, I know the recent one that you call yourself with is architect of the poor, but I think the whole story started when you were labeled as the first female architect of Pakistan when you just recently started, when you just started your career as an architect, right? And that was years ago. So I'm going to take you back in time a little bit, and I would like you to tell us how did that label come across, and what was your journey when you started off as a young female architect in Pakistan?
Thank you for the introduction, Atfan. Thank you so much for being so kind. Um, you talk of something like almost a century ago. I mean, this was, in the last century, I graduated and came back to Pakistan and started my practice in 1964. Now, when I went for my studies, I had no idea. I had gone to, my parents had sent me to UK, and I pursued that 5 year very rigorous course for some reason. I had no idea that when I came back, there'll be so few architects, first of all. There were maybe a dozen male architects in the whole profession. There were many who professed to be architects, but they were all really either engineers or others who had got licenses and were practicing. But really, the ones who were graduated and qualified were only very few. And it just happened. I mean, you never know when you're the first one because I went for my studies long before and I had no idea. And then, I arrived and suddenly I found that. But I think, in a sense, you carry a lot of responsibility if you're labeled as the first one because you know that you can't really have a misstep, that you have to do everything right. And for me, my profession had been very important because, I was the first generation of professionals who grew up after independence. So really, they were still very much influenced by the colonial rule and colonialism. And myself particularly, because my father has served as, something called the Indian Civil Service, ICS officer. So we were very much steeped into the colonial traditions as we were growing up. And so, I mean, there was this whole thing about nationalism. So I knew that I only had to work for Pakistan. My father had told me that we had to have a new vision now for the country, with a new country, and so on and so forth. So that's what I was coming from. And so even today, when a lot of people ask me, what is my international portfolio? Well, I have none. I've never worked anywhere else except in my own country, and I'm very proud of it.
Oh, that sounds really, really interesting. So would you say that in the beginning of your career, Yasmin, that nationalism plus the colonialism that you guys were very freshly coming out of it, did that influence your choices when you went into architecture and the designs that you came up with in the first half of your career?
Oh, absolutely, Atifa, because, my father had served in many, he was very young when Pakistan was created. And because he was one of the few bureaucrats who'd been trained well, so he had the chance of developing many new cities. In Lahore itself, he developed, places like Gulberg and Sabanabad and Shalmi and all the rest of them. But they were all in the vision of the West, because he was sent off to Oxford at the time, and of course he came back very much influenced by Champs-Élysées of Paris and all the rest of it. And so this is what his vision was, and he thought that's where we have to go. And this is what I was trained for as well. When I was in England, when I was in the UK and graduated from Oxford School of Architecture, which is now Oxford Brookes University, this is what we thought we'll do. And because I'd been so isolated in my childhood, I'd never really seen the natives, so to speak. We were not allowed to intermingle with them. Very few close friends who were locals. Otherwise, just kept aloof. But that's how the British had taught, generation of my father. And so I never knew my own culture. I thought there was nothing there because everything that was good was in the West. And so it took some time. And luckily, my husband had been the son of a politician who had done his modern grades at Oxford. And he was a kind of Awami person. So he would go out and he was photographing all kinds of things and so on. And I got a chance with him to go and visit all these beautiful old cities that I'd never seen, the medieval towns like Multan and Lahore and Peshawar and all the rest of them. Suddenly it opened up my eyes as to what great and rich tradition we had, which I had not known about, because I'd been steeped in another culture. And so I think that is something that then stayed with me, right? I mean, I call it a period of kind of unlearning or relearning about myself,
Okay.
and that's where I had to learn more about my own country, more about myself even. And that's how my whole journey for understanding my own heritage started, in terms of documentation and all the rest of it that we went on later on to do.
What did this relearning period translate into actually? Because I know you've done a lot of heritage work. So is that sort of an outcome of this, this epiphany that you got about the local culture in Pakistan?
Yeah. I think, we lived in a kind of and most of us live in a kind of a bubble, because we lead such privileged lives. And once we become educated, especially if you've been educated abroad, then my God, you're just above everything, aren't you, really? I mean, you know it just as well, Atifa. We don't think that we relate to the people who are around us. And that's something that's very damaging, I think. And I think I had to learn about what was good about my own country, that I did not have to follow the traditions that I'd lived with or had been taught about, that there was another tradition. There was a cultural heritage that was very strong. And that was something that we could learn from. So for me, it was a journey of learning all the time as to what is it that I could do. And luckily, I got chances where I was able to do much that, I wanted to do. So I was just very lucky.
Okay, Yasmeen, I also know that you've done a lot of heritage conservation work as well, right, within Pakistan. And you've worked on some really renowned buildings like the Lahore Fort and so on and so forth. So which one would you say is your most favorite project, or something interesting that you'd like to share from any of the heritage conservation work that you've done so far?
As far with the heritage work, it's always considered that it's a domain of the experts. Nobody else can dabble with it, and that's what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got this fantastic opportunity, which not many people get, of being appointed the national advisor by UNESCO And I was stationed in the Lahore fort. And I kept on telling Ingeborg, I don't think I can, I live in Karachi. How can I travel? And he said, no, I need you there. You better go there. So I did. And what a privilege it was. I mean, I just learned so much about my own culture just being there. I mean, everything is just amazing in terms of the Mughal culture that was so incredible. And I had the, I had the run of the place. I lived there, so I could walk at night and traverse the pathways that Nur Jahan might have, sort of been walking around with, and so on and so forth. So it was a wonderful experience, but also it taught me about lime that came in so useful when I started my humanitarian work. But I think the most, I feel the most impactful project that I have handled is the one which is called the Tomb of Sultan Ibrahim, 16th century, double dome, beautiful lofty building, and the tradition of Central Asia. And Temur, I mean, who's so kind of, full of himself and wanted everything to be grandiose. So he built all these double domes. And then here too, it was brought by, one of his, I think not son-in-law, but somebody, a close relatives who came and lived here, and maybe, as you know, they conquered part of the subcontinent. And so in Makli World Heritage, I got a chance to be able to do that with American funding. But I think what was interesting about it that we learned about Kashi. Kashi is this amazing, tile work, glazed tile work, but it's very, very rare and unusual. Only found in places like Multan and Lahore and also in Sindh. And they're all very different kind of Kashi. So the Kashi of Makli is very different, but very beautiful. And we had to learn to, in our conservation work, because it was highly damaged. So one had to learn to see how you could be doing it. And because I couldn't get the artisans, the local masters, to do the right thing, I decided to learn about it, and UNESCO helped me in that. So we had a couple of experts coming in for about 10 days, and they taught me what was wrong with the present Kashi as it was being practiced. And so we built lots of kilns, and we learned the traditional way of doing it. And there was a rejection of something like 90% because unless it matched and was the right thing, we couldn't do it, etc., etc. But what was interesting about it that because there was at Makli, it's really one of those unique sites, and I would urge you all to go there because it's so unbelievable. Because not only the tangible, I mean, that's just all pervading. Because there are Sufi shrines and there are people coming in with their, the devotional kind of activity that goes on there. But that also means there are lots of beggars, because my country, as you all know, is very well known for philanthropy. But the philanthropy is only, of a certain kind, not anymore, not much more. So everybody's very willing to give it to the poor, just alms distribution. So lots of beggars. So I decided to work with the beggars to see how I could, turn them away from begging and from these horrible soup kitchens where really the food was most atrocious, but they survived on that. I don't know how. And so I tried to pass on the tradition of making kashi in small, like tile mosaic with these poor beggar women. And then suddenly one of them decided to join us. And then she became my star artisan, if you like, Karima, and who began to sell her kashi from the same place where she used to beg before. And she started to make money, and she started to train others. And then later on, the same tradition we transferred into many other beggars who then did these beautiful terracotta tiles, because we're using the same tradition, the same ways, but really the best one that you can find. And so many people, the poor people, got really a lot of livelihood out of all that. And I think I feel that's the duty of us, to see how we can translate, this kind of very high kind of quality of heritage, but not to keep it remote as something like in a museum and kept separate, but something that translates into today's life, and how it can help others and poor people to really, be able to earn their living. So I'm very proud of that project, but I think it had a greater effect than any other. that I've ever
I think,
done.
and I think it's a beautiful story as well, and I've heard it many times. So it's good that you mentioned that story, because the next question that I wanted to ask, Yasmeen, that you've been a very successful sort of like a commercial architect and also as a heritage conservation expert as well in Pakistan. But I personally know there was a turning point in your life which ultimately made you pivot and took you on a journey which brought you to where you are right now. So, what I would like you to tell us, what was the turning point and what made you change your professional course of life and, you know, come into this social work and humanitarian work that you're doing right now?
Okay, well, I think everybody finds this rather intriguing, but I'm asked this question a lot of times. And well, I don't know really. It didn't happen suddenly, I can tell you that. It took some time for me to understand. And yes, and I was doing many projects for corporate sector. Suddenly I'd got into that, how should I say, you achieve a certain status in your profession that everybody wants you. And so that happened with me. But it was all about, very wealthy clients and corporate sector, which has money, no object, and all the rest of it. And I got very good chances with the, mega uh, companies such as the Pakistan State Oil, which I believe was, one of Fortune, I don't know, 500 companies, and so all the rest of it. And then ABN AMRO Bank was an international bank, and so on and so forth. And of course, they all wanted to leave a mark. And so did I, really, as an architect. That's what I'd been trained for, that when you design something, it must be iconic, it must be impressive, it must be, I don't know, whatever. And so I kept on doing it. I mean, for at least for 10 years or 15, this is what I was doing. And the time came when I felt that although each design was different, because of course, if you're a creative architect, that's what you must do. But basically, it was the same kind of approach. And just like you're churning out something that really, how many times can you make these beautiful buildings? I mean, it just somehow seemed rather superfluous finally in the context of things. And I'd done a couple of books by that time, and my husband had sold his insurance company, and he had become a writer and a great, he'd become a historian. And I think I envied him, and I said, well, how come that he's kind of writing and I'm unnecessarily stuck in this kind of, trying to please my corporate clients. And sometimes they were, and sometimes I had to have, real good fights with them. And it just, it was just, I thought, it's not fair. So I decided that I will give up and start writing my books. But then Caravan Karachi happened. We managed to revive historic architecture of Karachi. Then UNESCO took me to Lahore, and I had this amazing experience learning about lime and everything. And as you know, after the earthquake happened, that's what brought, basically yourself and myself together. And
That's
it was
true.
yeah.
The 2005 earthquake that happened in Pakistan, which
Yeah. Yeah.
nearly 75,000 people lost their lives.
Yeah. It was the most devastating one.
Yeah.
And I think all of us felt that we had to go and do something. I think every Pakistani, and I think many people from around the world felt that this was the time to go and help. And I think we never had that, at least I have not seen that kind of spirit of nationalism that emerged at the time. And I had no idea about this kind of work, humanitarian. I never heard of humanitarian work. I mean, architects were not supposed to do something like that. You're not supposed to be dabbling in stuff, trying to help people in doing something. You were always there to impose what you wanted. But like everybody else, I think I felt I had to go there. And so I did. And by that time, I'd closed up my office. It was gone. I was moved to Lahore. Uh, I'd never done humanitarian work. I had no funding. And it was like a foolish thing to do. And I was quite old at that time, even. And to try to go up to a mountainous place where I'd never been seemed like a far cry. But I felt, no, I felt I just had to go and do something. I didn't know what yet. So I arrived with my husband sort of saying, oh, all right, if you want to go, well, 500,000 is all that is. And he thought, well, I'll come back in a month or something and that'll be it. So I went along, and And Atfa, what was amazing was that you feel that you're going by yourself, but soon you're not alone. I mean, with humanitarian work, that's the most amazing experience that you have. That you are there and suddenly all kind of people start offering you help. I mean, I'd never experienced that in my life before. So I arrived on this place in Mansifal. First is Islamabad, and then I've tried to find out what could be done. If I found that the army was in charge, that there were these generals sitting there, and for some reason I was invited to some briefing by President Musharraf, which was for humanitarian work. I mean, I'd never run any work of that kind, but I was also invited for some reason. And then there were lots of questions, and I kept on raising my hand, but nobody listened to me. Then finally, the last question, I said, I've got to say. And I said, you've got to do the right thing now. We can't do concrete and everything else. We mustn't do that. We must work with the materials that are there and go for vernacular construction. So then they said, okay, you go and see General Nadeem. So I go and see General Nadeem, who was the in charge person at the time. And he says, but yes, madam, so you want to do something. So what is the special material you're going to use? I said, I don't know about special material, but I want to use lime rather than cement. He said, oh, that's a very novel idea. I said, yeah, the Mughals have been using it, for 500 years ago. And yes, it's very new now, but it's there. So anyhow, that's how it got started. And then so much help came, I cannot tell you. And then, of course, I mean, what Nokia did is history. Atifa and Nokia joined in, and they were the best partners I could have.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And what I particularly remember about that project, Yasmeen, was that, as you said, in the 2005 earthquake, the whole country mobilized. And you're right, the spirit of nationalism was quite high and quite heartwarming to watch, especially in light of the magnitude of the tragedy of the earthquake. But what we and Nokia particularly at that point liked the fact was that because there were if you remember, there were all these new fiberglass kind of structures coming into place and being shipped up north, to house the earthquake survivors. But you at that time propagated that we need to rebuild using local materials, number one. And one thing that we personally liked was the fact that the mindset that you wanted to change of the community. You particularly worked on their psychology as well. And you said that it's very important that they they rebuild their community themselves rather than somebody coming from outside and doing it for them, because it brings it that ownership and responsibility amongst them as well. And if I remember very correctly, that I think we stopped calling them as earthquake victims, and we started calling them as earthquake survivors. And that's the psychology that we wanted to promote at that time. And I know, Yasmeen, that's the psychology that you have taken forward in all the social projects that you have done since then. So the project that you done in Makli, the project that you did at Mirpur Khas and Tata and all these places, I want you to now shift towards those and tell us the current work that you're doing, and especially talk to us about the philosophy of Basa, the barefoot, what is it again? The barefoot social architecture. Yeah, social architecture that you've set up, and there's a whole philosophy around it as well. And I also want you to tell us what's the impact that you've created so far and what's your goal going forward.
Okay. Well, that's a lot of questions and very complex. Well, as all of you know, last year, again, we've been having disasters every year, literally, either earthquakes or floods, as you all know. And now I believe we're the 5th most vulnerable country in the world, Pakistan is. Now, I won't get into the blame game of saying what the global north is, how it's aggravating the climate change, or how far behind global south is now in terms of dealing with its own social issues. But the fact is that has devastated the country completely. I mean, 1/3 of Pakistan was submerged, as you all know. 33 million people had been displaced. And I mean, it's the worst disaster that anybody could have foreseen. And you know what is amazing about this disaster, Atifa, and you know well. When the floods had happened in the past, the rich Vaderas, rich whoever, would divert all the water towards the poor, villages where people had nothing in even before, but they would be all inundated. And this time, nature had a very fantastically leveling force, because it was not only the floods, but also the rain that happened. And that destroyed everything, whether it was the rich or the poor, there was no distinction anymore.
Yeah, because the water came from the sky rather than it was flooding from rivers.
They couldn't divert.
Yeah.
They couldn't divert the rain.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was a complete devastation that you can imagine. Not that it had, not that it had given any lessons to our rich people. I think they again continue with the same kind of mindset, but they also were in trouble. And so, I mean, economy is in a bad way in any case, but I think that certainly was one of the reasons. And I mean, before that, COVID-19 and all the rest of it. So I'm not going to go into that, but just to let you know that I'm sure that all of you know that more than 50% of the population of Pakistan today is below the poverty line. And that people who were devastated, and I reckon there are at least 3 million households that require rehabilitation and shelter. And so it's the worst possible situation that Pakistan could have faced. With the poverty levels as they are, the economic conditions as they are, the way people have been displaced, and I mean, there's no help. So after a year, if the World Bank comes in with, I don't know, $600 million, well, we should count how many units they've been, or where they've been able to get to. They're all going in for high carbon buildings and very expensive houses. And the houses is all they're interested in. And this is true for the government as well as the World Bank and all these other all these entities that control all the funding. So I started working in September, and I thought I'd put up a kind of a holistic model, which required only $150 per family to make them self-sufficient. All the basic needs of shelter, toilet, water, solar power, and chula, as well as flood mitigation measures, as well as food security, as well as getting livelihoods. And within 6 months, I'd proven that this could be done with $150 per family, and nothing more was needed, with my sustainable bamboo structures and just making people into our partners. But it didn't cut any ice with anybody, not the government, not anybody. They decided to go in for this high carbon stuff again. Because I think the fallacy is that because we are not emitting any carbon, so why should we control carbon? I mean, this, to me, I cannot even understand this logic. But anyway, there it is. So everybody goes, again, completely oblivious of climate change or what we are doing with the planet. Anyhow, so then I was, at that time, visiting professor at Cambridge, and so I was away for 2 months, and I came back. So in December, I come back, and I find that in 3 months, we've not moved very much. There were only a few thousand families we could deal with because very few people were coming to join hands. But I declared that I want to rehabilitate 1 million households by the end of 2024. So I struggled. I tried to get support. I had to go back to Cambridge teaching again. And I came back in March, end of March. And I said, well, this is not working, but I have to get my target. So I started off something like zero donor model, which fits in well with my bazaar, tenets of saying zero carbon, zero waste, zero donor leads to zero poverty. And I think we are going to prove it. And no money is involved. Only money I spend is on my pilots, and I do it myself. I don't ask from anybody. I don't think anybody even understands what I'm trying to do. And today with my zero donor model, it's gradually increasing number. My brigades, which consist of the same people who'd gone through the adversity, but now trained, go and help others to start, first of all, food security. Then they start building their 1-room houses and toilets. And hopefully they will also they're starting, more farming. But water is the biggest issue with us. So what I decided that because the water in the canals is available. The British had left us this amazing network of canals. So we are drawing water. One source of water for one village of 60 families is enough to get them going. So today, my last count, over 270,000 families, not people, families, have become food sufficient. And they have themselves built 26,000 one-room houses and 28,000 washrooms by themselves. This is my humanitarian.
Yasmeen, how do they do that? How do they do that by themselves? Because you need to explain that how does that component in your overall philosophy works? How are you making them? How are you empowering them to be financially independent to do all of these things themselves?
You know, Atifa, I never had understood myself until I started working here how many resources actually are available, but the poor are told they can't access them. Or they're told that nothing will grow in their land. I mean, you know, you have this whole sea of fertility around in Sindh, in the flood area. I mean, come on, it's a floodplain. Everything grows there. But you go to the villages and they're desolate because the poor have been led to believe their land is useless. How can that be? So my first job is to say, okay, let's remove the crust. They remove the crust, they start growing, and vegetables are growing like anything. It is fertile land, for God's sake. You dig a hole, we dug holes, and you go down to 6 feet, and the water is there and it stays there. Well, we're breeding fish. Each family is now breeding fish. And we're saying, you know, start breeding chickens. They're doing that. But I think the whole crux is, how do you develop a sense of ownership for what you have? And this is our job. My teams go and they say, well, this is a boundary, remove all the muck from here, and you have a boundary, and then you start, you know, they teach them how to start building. Well, there's a lot of skills available. It's just a matter of organizing. And then there are always these clusters of houses. So we say, okay, put a boundary around them so that they have their ownership. And as soon as they define their space, they start just owning it and making them as clean and beautiful as possible. You'd be surprised how much people are able to do just by a little bit of guidance. And now at 270,000 odd families are today, they're growing vegetables, they're growing fish, and they're growing, they have chickens. So they have the basic nutrients. And they're saying, first we might have had not even one meal. Today we are having 3 meals. And we're not buying stuff from outside. And now, so basically, my job is to see how I can design the most affordable kind of structures, and that will be safe. But also to teach them so that they're really partners in all this. They're not victims, as you said, they're partners. They're there to be able to understand that they have the capacity to do it. They only need the knowledge and so little money. Now, my one-room house is costing 6,250 rupees. Now, if they start saving money at 100 rupees a day, which we teach them, and women are the ones that are leading the whole thing. So when my teams go, the first thing they tell them is they teach them the chula, which is an absolute front runner. I mean, that just, you know, every woman takes it up and she starts building as soon as she learns. Then they start saving first 50 rupees a day and then 100 rupees a day. And so they develop the capacity to purchase. For instance, lime has to be 1,800 rupees worth of lime has to be bought. Some bamboo roof has to be bought, but that is a little bit later. They are taught how to make the normal brick properly. It's all well designed. And then what I learned from the 2005 earthquake, that you use a lot of debris. So all around there's debris of collapsed houses, and there's burnt brick that I would never use otherwise because it's high carbon. But there, it makes us very good foundation. So just collect everything. You have no idea how much waste. It's all waste economy. It's my barefoot waste economy that I'm now promoting. Just use every resources that you have around you, and you can do it without anybody's support. You don't need anybody.
I mean, it's amazing, as I said, because what you're doing right now is you're empowering them. You're teaching them how to do it. Rather than, just handing them out money or telling them somebody else is going to come and do it, you're inculcating a sense of responsibility, and they are taking ownership, and you're seeing great results, right? You're seeing a lot of results that people are taking ownership. Even these poor people, want all they need is the right guidance on how to do things, and then they just move forward and start doing it. But are there any
Atifa, I think we have to say, and we have to now stand up and say that very clearly. We don't want the international colonial charity model. We don't want charity. It's the most demeaning thing to anybody. You rob them of their self-respect. And then all these big organizations everywhere, international, national, UN system, they come in and tell us, well, selectively, you need this and we'll give you this. Well, life is not in compartments and in silos. You have to make sure that you get everything. You need everything. But it's not done. So I just decided, since nobody's helping, the government is not interested, World Bank and the likes of them are not interested, the rich in my own country are not interested. Well, what chance do the poor have? And nobody cares that they are sitting out. Do you know something? We were running this climate volunteers program, which kids had come in from all over the different parts of the world, and my own from Pakistan. And they stayed in one of the villages who was secure because it's, they are my holistic model. And then one day, there was an outpour, 3 hours in the daytime and 4 hours at night. And the next day, they heard, or they went to see that the villages around that had not had any interventions, they were all displaced. They all had to pack everything and go in and sit on the bund and on the road with just 7 hours of rain, because the area got flooded, because the roofs all were blown away. And then what was amazing was they had visited a couple of villages to do my hazard mapping in villages, and the ones who are secured now and a holistic model, they came and told them that last night they had 60 or 70 people from around the villages who had to leave to come, and they provided them refuge. These people who had nothing only a few months ago, nothing. That is the kind of humanism that's developing. That's the kind of humanism we need in the world, We just don't have to keep on giving, handouts. Handouts don't help at all. So I think we've got to change our mindsets. We have to think about what we need in countries that they have no resources. How do you get it to everybody? And how do you spread the whole thing? And avoid displacement. Avoid displacement in one way or the other. So,
as I said, and it's impressive because you're teaching them how to fish, you're teaching them how to grow their own gardens, and the kind of results, and not only in terms of the physical, but also in terms of the mindset change and how they're helping out to reach each other. It's just amazing. And they're building a community, a much more stronger community, I would say. Okay, Yasmeen, we're getting a flood of questions right now. So I'm going to move to some of the questions that Ali has been posting on the chat. I'm going to read out one or two of them because we just have 20 minutes. When Ali asked me to do this conversation with you, and then he said that you just have 1 hour, I knew that 1 hour would not be enough to hear your story. But still, we do have to manage the time and be a little conscious of the time management as well. And I do want the audience to, I do want to give the audience a chance as well. So one of the questions that's been posted here is, what do you consider to be the main priorities and responsibilities of today's architects?
I'm speaking about this all over the world today. And I'm saying, look, RIBA took a very brave, it was a brave step on their part, because architects had never been considered that they could do anything else except work for the wealthy. And with this, they have given legitimacy to work that I do for the poor and for humanity. I think if architects want to remain relevant in the next generation, next decades, then we have to move from just working for the select few, to how do you serve many different levels of disparities and marginalization. Because architecture is a tool, and I keep on saying this. It's a tool when it gives agency to those who have no voice. You look at my women, the way they decorate their mud walls. That gives them the agency. They're so confident now. Their creativity has come to the fore. There's so much work to be done in communities everywhere in urban areas. I mean, I've been to so many cities now. Everywhere there's marginalization. Everywhere there are ghettos. Everywhere there are shelterless people, homeless. What are architects doing about it? Why do we remain like prima donnas? Why don't we become activists and challenge the system? Why aren't we out there when there's urban heat islands being formed or urban flooding happening? Where are we? We should be right there. We know with our design capability, that's the best thing we have. That's the best tool that only architects possess and nobody else. No other professional. We can do it. So yeah, there's plenty to do for architects in the next decade.
Well, all the architects out there, you've heard what Yasmeen has said. So maybe you might need to change your direction a little bit. Okay, this is a question much more related to technology. I'm going to ask you anyways, Yasmeen, just to, I would love to hear your response on this one. How do you see artificial intelligence impacting the future of architecture? Do you consider AI as a creative enhance or a deterrent to the organic evolution of design?
Well, I've not had a chance to use AI. I don't know what it really means. Certainly, as far as AutoCAD is concerned and other software is concerned, I'm very happy to use them. But beyond that, I don't know. I think in design, I find that my pen serves me better than my computer when I'm thinking or when I want to be creative. And because I work with people, I want, and not everybody should become mechanical, I feel, because you have to put your heart into something that you do. And that can only happen, I think, when you are fully engaged in the work and not try to do it through artificial intelligence, I presume. But I'm last generation. I don't know what the young people do now. So
Fair enough, fair enough. Okay, the next one is why sustainable housing or construction are not acceptable and popular in Pakistan or across the world. Sustainable housing, and this is something I would like to ask as well. I mean, it's low cost, it's cheap, but why is it not widely accepted in Pakistan or across the world?
well, well, there are different factors, various factors which are a deterrent. First of all, the lobby of high carbon materials is very, very strong. Cement and steel, which are the worst possible materials to use. I mean, for me, it's zero steel and zero cement. Now, that itself means that you're limited, and most architects are not trained. Our universities and courses are very deficient in trying to tell people what are the other alternative materials, and that's another thing we need to fight for. We need to see there's so much research going on around the world. I cannot tell you because I've been to so many universities now. I mean, which university does not have a research department? It's talking about alternative materials. But where is that research? It's not available to us. So I think that's what we have to rectify. Secondly, who says it's not popular? Among the poor, it's very popular, and that's the largest number. So are we talking about the wealthy? Well, what do we care about the wealthy? How much percentage do they make? According to Thomas Piketty, it's only 1% of the population. Is that what we care about? Whether they think sustainability is the right thing or not? Or do we care about these masses of people who really need it and are perfectly happy pursuing it? So I don't agree with the question, although it's something that's always talked about. So, but
Okay, so you can agree to disagree with them.
Yeah.
Okay, so another question plus a comment is that I love the work of Yasmeen, especially she did for flood affectees. What inspired her in particular, as there are already many people working for years to design shelter homes? How do you click the creative inspiration of yours to solve a massive problem like a natural disaster affected houses as an architect and a creative?
But you come to Pakistan and see what we are doing. 26,000 self-built houses, one-room houses, strong and resistant to floods, have been built. I mean, we've done 40,000 before, as you know, with IOM, with bamboo and mud. But this is now something that's entirely self-driven, entirely self-sustaining, entirely every possible, it's zero carbon, zero everything. Now listen, folks, I'll be moving into another room because my computer seems to be dying in a little while. So if you don't mind, I'll just run through and I can keep on talking. I don't think it matters. So carry on.
So you're going to multitask, Yasmeen, with us walking and
I'm
talking at
so
the same
sorry.
time?
I thought I'd charge it enough, but obviously I did not. I'm just
No,
very
no,
disorganized.
that's
So,
perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. Okay, the next one is Yasmeen, you're listening, right?
yeah, I can hear
Okay.
you.
Okay, good. We live at a time where many countries are spending a lot of energy on urban development. However, there is another reality that there's a growing trend of reverse migration.
Yes.
Do you think urban development is a more industrial hangover that forces us to ignore rural development?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's a very good question and absolutely bang on. Bang on. I think we need to reverse. If we can make our villages more livable, then certainly, and I think we need that because even today, when the areas are the battleground of climate change, and we can't have it. I mean, we need to change. We need to go in for degrowth. There's so many good ideas floating around. We need to accept them and start using them, you know? I think that's what's important.
Okay. How much demographic influx or internal migration affects the character of a city or a town?
How much, well, internal migration is not good anywhere. And I mean, you know, it's just that uh, when you come to the cities, they don't have all the resources to house people. So the slums are the worst ones. I mean, 50% of Karachi today is slums. People don't have a life there. Should go, and even areas that are not considered slums, my God, they're unlivable. The kind of urban blight, the kind of urban heat island and flooding everywhere. It's not only Pakistan. In many countries, it's happening. You know that.
Uh, there's one of the examples that you gave about making the house or houses under just in within $150. So somebody is saying really yet need more clarity on building a home with $150. How long would it take to make the bricks, rear checks, etc., save that money and then build a home? The individual would love to learn the
Yeah, yeah.
mechanism.
No, that's why that was when I thought a lot of help was coming, and there was lots of donor, whatever promises and all the rest of it. There was enough money. Come on, I mean, I need only 150,000. What is it? $150,000 to house 1 million. Only that, and now $600,000 been committed by World Bank alone. So I can easily do in $450,000. I could build you. You know, I could accommodate all 3 million, you know? So it's not that there's a dearth of money, for God's sake. The money is there everywhere. I mean, Pakistan is poor, but no, God, look at the
But
way they
Yasmin, it's
live.
just not the money. They also want to know how you're doing it. So I believe you need to maybe guide them towards your resource libraries. And if they want to learn more about your, the design work, how you've designed the bamboo structures, how you're making them. I know you have tutorials online. So if you can just tell the
Yeah,
audience a little bit more about them.
sure, sure. But it's all available. If you go to my YouTube channel, which is called the Yasmeen Lari Zero Carbon Channel, you'll find a lot of stuff there. If you go to my website, which is called Heritage Foundation Park, PAK.org, it has the humanitarian update there. And I think that will give you a lot of information as to what we are trying to do. So by all means, go in and check it out. But better still, why don't you all come to Pakistan? Go to my village and live there.
That brings me to a question that I wanted to ask you, Yasmeen, and I'm sure the audience also wants to know because we've got people joining from all over the world, not just in Pakistan. How can people be part of this journey that you're on right now? You know, the projects that you are working on, especially the 1 million humongous target you've given yourself. And I know that you're facing quite a bit of challenges in that as well, and you're looking for solutions in to help you out, sort out the little bit of kinks that you find here and there. So how can people be part of this journey with you? How can
Okay.
they help you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, first of all, of course, I don't want any charity. That should be clear. I certainly don't want any intermediaries. That means no money going into any NGOs. If you want to help, we've got women's committees. You can send them directly. So if somebody wants to donate a hand pump, by all means, we'll give you the names. and the villages where you can send the money, and they can start with that. Schools are being built. If anybody wants to donate, I don't know, a monitor or a computer, well, we'll give you the names. You can send them directly to them. So as long as a direct connection, you must not any longer send your money into a black hole, as they say. Send it directly to people who need it. And I wish that somebody could really design a kind of a humanitarian Amazon for me. But you could say, well, this is where it's needed, and you could send directly, because that's what technology can do. So why aren't we using technology to have direct connections? Why is it that we just want to give charity or handouts because it gladdens it satisfies our conscience? I think we need to do a bit more if you want to really help and build a connection. But more than that, bring your knowledge about agriculture. What can be done? What is the waste materials all around? Somebody should go and do a recce and tell me, this is the waste material that still you're not using. How can it be used? I mean, you bring your knowledge with all your, you're so enlightened here, and you've got so much, I don't know, you're open to so many portals of knowledge. Well, bring them to Pakistan. Bring them for the poor. Help me in that way. It's not about money. That's never the answer.
No, that's great. But and Yasmeen, I'm always very, very amused by your philosophy that you don't want any money. You're the only person in Pakistan I know who says I don't want any money. Everybody else is saying, please give us as much donation as possible. But like you said, build a connection. So, for example, if there's an expat Pakistani sitting outside of Pakistan, if they want to come, if they want to, come and visit your projects, how can that be done? If you can just give a little bit of more practical details for people to chew on and think about after the call.
Well, certainly, I think organizations like Ali's can do a lot in organizing these groups. We can accommodate, we have 12 cottages in which students, we have double kind of, occupancy. So there are 24 of them who come and stay at any one time. And so that's available as long as you tell us in advance. And then you go and stay there, and you can check for yourself as to what's needed. Why do you want me to tell you?
Great. There's a question. It says, is there any collaboration with Modulus Tech? I don't know what that means, but I'm assuming you would know what it means. Modulus Tech. Modulus Tech is something that's sponsored by the UN.
I have no idea what it is. And I don't care about these systems.
Okay. Okay, we just got 6 minutes left, so I'm just going to take a couple more questions very quickly. What standing does the field of landscape architecture hold in Pakistan? Would prioritization of landscape architecture and studies of large-scale natural systems not go hand in hand with this kind of work, especially in a country like Pakistan, which faces such a huge climate crisis?
Of course, I mean, for instance, Karachi needs desperately to bring in landscaping into every place. It's so high carbon, and it's just everything is emitting heat, and greenery and landscaping. And how can you bring in nature into cities? That's the one big question. And why aren't we doing this? I mean, why are we trying to have these manicured lawns and all the rest of it? It's no longer relevant to us. So if you want to now look at the climate, and especially climate resilience, and especially climate smart strategies, then certainly landscaping plays a very important role in all this.
Okay, Ali, I'm going through it. I think I've covered most of the questions. I don't think I've left any out. Yeah, there's this one. Sorry. Yasmeen, don't you think it's ironic that even after the flooding we speak of, thousands of trees in our assigned forest land are being cut down to make way for buildings and roads? Surely there has to be a way we can relocate these trees as other countries do to create a more sustainable future.
Of course, our countries need to do that. I mean, unless we do it, we are lost, really, because it's not only about emissions, carbon emissions, it's all about how people need to have a humanistic kind of an environment. They need to live a decent life. They don't get it right now. And we all have to, as built environment professionals, we carry a huge responsibility to make
sure. Is this something that you're talking about to any of the government officials here in Pakistan, Yasmeen? I know that you propagating it quite a bit with somebody listening to you.
Well, I don't
Yasmeen?
expect many to listen to me, so that's why I go ahead and do it on my own, whatever I can do.
Okay. Okay, folks, we're almost at the end of the session. It's been, as usual, Yasmeen, great chatting with you. There are many other things that I really wanted you to speak about, but because of the shortage of time, I tried to keep it as to the point as possible. For those of you who would like to know more about Yasmeen's work and to look at look at the pictures or the videos that of all the work that she's doing, the octagon structure, the bamboo structures that she's created, and the chulas or the stoves that her women in the villages are making. You can go to her YouTube channel, to her Heritage Foundation of Pakistan website as well, and you'll find all the material there. Yasmeen, if somebody wants to reach out to you directly, how can they do that very quickly? Should we give your email address? Is that okay?
Yeah, by all means do that, yes.
Okay. So Ali, maybe you can post.
If you like, do it through Ali if you like. I mean, it's up to you. I really have no problem.
Okay. Okay, great. So Ali, you can be the intermediary here. And if anybody wishes to reach out to Yasmeen directly and be part of her project and be part of this journey that she's embarked on for many years and for which she has been recognized internationally and for which she has been awarded, the greatest, the Royal Gold Medal, and made us proud, made her family proud, I'm sure, and made the whole country proud. Yasmeen, we love your work. We love you. We hope that you keep on doing what you're doing. We would love to, and we hope that all the I know you're still facing some challenges, but I really sincerely hope that you're able to overcome all those challenges. And I've seen you do that. I've seen you come up with all these great ideas on how to bypass all these challenges and still, be the champion for the poor that you are. And I know your very favorite label these days is that you call yourself the architect of the poor, right? So starting from being the first female architect of Pakistan, your journey has now taken you to being called the architect of the poor. So that's a remarkable, remarkable journey. You're a remarkable person. May God bless you, Yasmeen, and thank you so very much for doing this session with us. Any closing remarks?
Thank you, Atifa, for being such a good moderator. You've done an excellent job of, trying to capsule everything. And thank you, Ali, for organizing this amazing audience. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining from whatever part of the world you are. We hope you have a good day, good afternoon, or good evening. Thank you so much.